Welcome to the Crawlcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and these are my predictions for Week 6 of the NFL season. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Now let's get started. The first game is the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 4-1, versus the New York Giants, who are 1-4, and I think the Eagles are going to win. So the Philadelphia Eagles versus the New York Giants. So I think the Eagles are going to win just because simply I think they're a better team. Yes, they are in a bit of a slump right now because they really haven't looked great in any of their 5 games, and so that is definitely concerning. And also they might be missing Saquon Barkley. But man, the Giants, I just feel like the Eagles are just overall a much better team, especially if their defense. Like the Giants' defense has been inconsistent, but overall pretty decent. And then Jackson Dart, he looked okay his first game. Last week he had a couple of really good plays, but a couple of terrible plays. So we really just don't know what we have with the Giants on offense. But the Eagles, their defense has looked pretty good throughout the season so far. And then Jalen Hurts has kind of struggled a bit. Their offense has not been clicking the way it normally is. Again, I think Saquon Barkley plays. We don't know for sure. But overall, I just think the Eagles are a better team and they should win this. The next game is the Denver Broncos, who are 3-2, versus the New York Jets, who are 0-5, and I think the Broncos should win. So you have the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets, and the Broncos kind of should win this one handily. Their defense has looked pretty good all season, and then Bo Nix has been quite inconsistent, and he just needs to play a bit better on offense. But the Jets, they've just been a complete disaster. Other than the first game, their offense and Justin Fields has looked bad. Their defense has also looked bad. And quite frankly, I'm not saying Aaron Glenn should be fired, but I think he just needs to find a decent defensive coordinator. I never thought he was a good defensive coordinator of the Lions because the Lions, their offense has always been great, and that's what's always led the team, and their defense has always been a disappointment. That's how the Lions were for the entire season, the past couple of seasons with Aaron Glenn at defensive coordinator. So I think he is a good motivator and a team leader. That's what I hear a lot of people say, especially in the locker room, that he's a good motivator and players like him. But I just don't think he's that great of a defensive coordinator. And this might be a hot take, but this is what I've been saying a while, is I don't think the Jets should have ever fired Robert Saleh. I really feel bad for him because Robert Saleh I thought was a great defensive coach and a really good head coach. But then what happened is that they were built to win. They basically went all in that first season of Aaron Rodgers 2 years ago, and then Aaron Rodgers tore his ACL, and then their offense just couldn't play well. Their defense played great, but their offense just couldn't like stay with the defense, and that's not his fault. That's not Robert Saleh's fault that the offense sucked without Aaron Rodgers. And then the second season, the team just wasn't good enough to win because they went all in, and then once you go all in afterwards, your team's just not good enough to win. So I kind of feel bad for, like I said, Robert Saleh. I don't think he should have been fired. I do think he deserves to be a head coach in the NFL. It was just kind of bad luck, and here's again the expectations changed, but they shouldn't have. Where with Robert Saleh, the expectation was always Super Bowl. Well, now that Aaron Rodgers went down and you don't have a quarterback, you can't win the Super Bowl. So again, I don't think they should have ever fired Robert Saleh, but I'm not saying blame Aaron Glenn just yet because this team is just overall not very good. But that's just something to keep an eye on. Is I think there's a high likelihood within the next 3 years he probably gets fired just because I believe in him in terms of the Dan Campbell motivator coach because I don't think anyone would hire Dan Campbell as like their offensive coordinator, but he is a good head coach because he's a motivator, and that's why I believe in Aaron Glenn. I think he's a good motivator. I just don't think he's a good like defensive coordinator coach. So overall, Broncos looking good. Jets absolute dumpster fire. The Broncos should win this. The next game is the Seattle Seahawks, who are 3-2, versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 4-1, and I think the Seahawks are going to win. So the Seattle Seahawks versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is something I do struggle with, and I'll be fully honest about it. Where the Jaguars, yes, they are 4-1, but I just don't believe in them. I think their defense is fairly decent, but I struggle to believe in Trevor Lawrence just because he hasn't really given me any proof to believe in him. I feel like at this point, where that final play of the game last week was really good by him, but it felt more like bad coaching on Kansas City because when Trevor Lawrence initially fell down, the entire Kansas City defense just stood there and stopped, and no one tried to tackle him. So he basically just had a free rush to the end zone. So I think that's more bad coaching on KC. And again, maybe I should rework my opinion on this because they are 4-1, but I don't think they're playing that great. I don't think they're playing particularly great teams. And I think they're getting a little bit lucky. Again, maybe you can prove me wrong. I don't know. Trevor Lawrence is just one of those guys where I struggle to believe in him. Again, just because he in his 4 years in the NFL, he's had one decent season, and other than that, he's been terrible. And so again, maybe I just need more evidence of Trevor Lawrence being good to believe in him. And then Sam Darnold, he's been playing really, really great. I know it's coincidental, but Sam Darnold looked great last year, and so Sam Darnold, he's been looking really good this year. The Seahawks offense has been amazing with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then Kenneth Walker's look good, the O-lines look good, and Sam Darnold seems like he's on a good run right now. It's just that the defense that's been a little bit disappointing. But they went up against Baker Mayfield and kind of the Bucks' high-powered offense, and I just don't believe the Jaguars have the same type of offense. So I think the Seahawks should win this one. Sam Darnold's playing really, really well, but the Jaguars could prove me wrong. I know it's my bias. I just don't believe in the Jaguars that much. The next game is the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 3-2, versus the Miami Dolphins, who are 1-4, and I think the Chargers will win this game. So you have the Chargers versus the Miami Dolphins. Both these teams seem to be struggling a little bit right now. Since the loss of Khalil Mack from the Chargers, their defense seems to be struggling quite a bit to recover from that, and their defense has not been playing really well. And then also Justin Herbert needs to take a lot of the blame too, because the first 3 weeks he was playing like the best quarterback in the NFL. In the last 2 weeks, he struggled quite a bit, and so Herbert just needs to play better. And then the running backs. Every single running back is injured on the Chargers. You have Amarian Hampton, who's out for at least 4 weeks. You have Najee Harris, who's done for the season. I think there's actually a good shot that sooner or later the Chargers are going to trade for Alvin Kamara. I think it makes sense. The Saints are done with him. He's old, and the Saints aren't going to win anytime soon, so they can try to recoup some picks for him. So I think that makes sense, at least to me, to try to get Alvin Kamara. And then the Dolphins, man, they are just a dumpster fire. They somehow lost last week when they shouldn't have. And then Mike McDaniel's probably going to get fired soon. I'd actually predict he probably gets fired after this loss because of how bad the Dolphins are going. And I think there's something to that where there's some people just aren't like head coach material. Where I think you see that a lot with like Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator now for the Eagles, I believe. And he is an amazing defensive coordinator. He succeeds everywhere he tries, but once he's given a head coaching opportunity, he just can't do it. And I think Mike McDaniel might be in a similar situation where he's a really, really good offensive coordinator and deserves a lot of credit for that, but he struggles as a head coach. And that's why I also think why Ben Johnson, it took him so long to try to get a head coaching job, because I think he saw him in himself where he's like, hey, I'm good. I'm a good offensive coordinator, but maybe I'm not head coach material. So I think there's something to that where, again, the Chargers need this win. They need to play better. And this could be a good get right game for Justin Herbert to go against a terrible Miami defense. And then Mike McDaniel, this week or next week, I can see being his last week as the Dolphins head coach. So I think the Chargers should win this one. The next game is the Los Angeles Rams, who are 3-2, versus the Baltimore Ravens, who are 1-4, and I think the Rams are going to win. So you have the Los Angeles Rams versus the Baltimore Ravens. So two teams on kind of the reverse trajectory, where the Rams are looking really good. Matthew Stafford's playing at an MVP level, and if you look at their two losses, their first one came off of a blocked field goal, which feels kind of like luck. And then the second one just came after Mac Jones played absolutely amazing, and in overtime, there was kind of a stupid play call where Kyren Williams was struggling a lot in the game. And so the final play of the game, 4th and 1, you run it up the middle of Kyren Williams instead of trusting Matthew Stafford. I thought that was kind of dumb. And then the Ravens, their defense, horrible. Cooper Rush, horrible. Just everyone's injured. It's a complete disaster. I don't even think I can say any more bad things about the Ravens. Is Lamar Jackson's injured, their whole defense is injured. It's just bad. It's just bad. So the Ravens should win this. I think Cooper Rush should play a little bit better this time, probably, but overall, just the Ravens are a terrible team, and the Rams are a really good team. And I say the Ravens season is probably over because Lamar Jackson's probably going to miss a few more games, and the entire team is just dealing with injuries, and it's probably going to be like the Bengals last year, where the Bengals really turned it on in the second half of last year, but it turns out they lost too many games at the beginning to the point where they weren't able to come back. And I think this probably will be like the Rams, or probably the Ravens this year, where if Lamar Jackson comes back and all these guys come back, they're going to be too far down to try to come back and make the playoffs. And then the Rams, they're just a really good team. So overall, I think the Rams should win this. The next game is the Arizona Cardinals, who are 2-3, versus the Indianapolis Colts, who are 4-1, and I think the Colts are going to win this. So the Cardinals versus the Colts. Honestly, the Colts should just win this. I went on a little rant last week about the Cardinals and their incompetence. Hopefully, it shouldn't be too bad, but again, here's the goal for this game, because these two teams did in the last 2 weeks. No fumbling before the goal line. Just run the extra 3 yards, get the touchdown, and then you can do whatever you want. Like, I don't understand how this still happens in the NFL. Like, everyone should have seen Deshaun Jackson do it, and then been like, that is the dumbest man on planet Earth for fumbling before he got into the end zone, and it should never have happened again. And then it keeps happening again. I do not know how this keeps happening. It makes no sense to me. And in my last video, I talked about, I'm like, what should be the punishment for fumbling before the goal line? I have got it now. I think you should be suspended for the remainder of the season, because that is how they treat gambling in the NFL, and that is a play so stupid, so dumb, so incompetent, that feels like gambling. That is on par with how bad like NFL players gambling is. So that is my pitch to the NFL. If you fumble before the goal line, you are suspended for the rest of the season. So in this game, the Colts actually have looked pretty good. Their offense looked great. Their defense has looked great. And then the Cardinals, their defense hasn't looked that bad, although they blew it last week, but I also blame the offense's incompetence. But their offense just needs to get it together. Kyler Murray's not looking great. Him and Marvin Harrison have been doing a little bit better, but overall haven't been amazing. So the Colts should win this plain and simple, and hopefully this isn't the battle of incompetence where we just see the dumbest plays over and over again. That is my one hope, is just both teams be smart and not incompetent. So the next game is the Dallas Cowboys, who are 2-1, versus the Carolina Panthers, who are 2-3, and I think the Cowboys are going to win. So you have the Cowboys and Panthers. You have basically the two worst defenses in the NFL. I am picking the Cowboys because at least they have like the best offense in the NFL, and then the Panthers, they're terrible. I understand Rico Dowdle had an amazing game last week, but I can't imagine he's going to repeat it, because I don't think he's that good of a running back. I don't particularly believe in Bryce Young. I don't think he's that good. I don't believe in this Panthers team at all. Like, their only hope is that Dallas's defense is just worse than theirs, and maybe they can stop Dallas a time or two on offense, but I really don't see that happening, because, again, both these defenses are terrible, and Dallas's defense might be worse than Carolina's defense, but Dallas's offense is so much better than Carolina's offense. And I kind of made this claim previously where I think Dallas screwed up with the Micah Parsons trade, because, hear me out, they have the best offense in the NFL, and they'll still have that if they kept Micah Parsons, and their defense is probably the worst defense in the NFL, and if their defense just plays a little bit better, this is definitely a playoff team and potentially a Super Bowl team, whereas their defense being as bad as it is, it's like, kind of feels like they're struggling a lot to win these games, and so, again, the Panthers are just horrible, so the Cowboys should win, but again, I just think it was a mistake trading Micah Parsons by the Cowboys. The next game is the New England Patriots, who are 3-2, versus the New Orleans Saints, who are 1-4, and I think the Patriots are going to win. So I think the Patriots are going to win. Last week felt like Drake May's coming out party. He looked really, really good. Him and Stephon Diggs just looked phenomenal, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. And I think this offense is now really humming. Ramondre Stevenson does need to fix his fumbling issues, because that's seriously costing them games and really hurting them. But this is why I don't understand why he's still starting, because I understand he is talented, and I think he is a good running back, but at some point you have to say, okay, the negatives from the fumbles are worse than any of the positives of the good runs. Kind of reminds me of Jameis Winston a little bit, where it's like, Jameis Winston has a lot of good throws, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards, but the interceptions are so bad that kind of negates all the touchdowns. So I say if Ramondre Stevenson basically fumbles one more time this season, like, he needs to be benched. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He just can't keep doing this. And then the Saints, Spencer Rattler has played really well, and their offense has played pretty good. Their defense is a bit disappointing, but I think this will be a close game because, again, Spencer Rattler and this Saints offense has played pretty well and definitely above expectations this season. But I think Drake May will continue his momentum and play extremely well, and I think the Patriots should win this, although I think it will be a really close game. Like, probably Patriots win it by a game-winning field goal. That's how close I think it will be. So the next game is the Cleveland Browns, who are 1-4, versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 3-1. And this is my upset of the week. I think the Browns are going to win. So this is my big upset of the week, and I'm picking the Browns. This is the main reason why I'm picking the Browns is Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know what Aaron Rodgers were getting during this game because the Browns have an elite defense. Their defense is still one of the best defenses in the NFL. They've shut down almost all the offenses that they've been playing, except for right at the end at a couple of them. And Aaron Rodgers, he's struggled with pressure for the past couple of games, except for the Vikings. Against the Vikings, who have a pretty good defense, he absolutely dialed them up and played absolutely amazing against the Vikings, who are good at generating pressure and stopping those big plays. So, are we getting Vikings Aaron Rodgers of 2 weeks ago, who can dot up the Browns and not really be affected by pressure, or are we getting the Aaron Rodgers from week 2 and week 3? Because during that time, the Steelers' offensive line is pretty bad, and when Aaron Rodgers gets pressured, he just can't move like he used to because he's on the older side. And so I don't know which Aaron Rodgers we're getting. And then the Browns. Dillon Gabriel, he looked pretty good last week. And he didn't look spectacular, but again, it's against a good Vikings defense, so he deserves kind of all the credit in the world where he played extremely, extremely well. And then the Steelers defense. 2 weeks ago, the Steelers defense did shut down their opposing team. But overall, the Steelers defense has not been that good. So I don't know what Steelers defense we're getting. So overall, I am picking the Browns because I think Dillon Gabriel will continue his momentum. I think the Steelers defense is going to probably struggle a little bit. And then Aaron Rodgers, I simply do not know. I'm going to say he probably struggles a little bit, so I am picking the Browns. But I think this will be a really close one, and it's a divisional matchup. Almost all divisional matchups are super close. I'm just picking the Browns. The next game is the Tennessee Titans, who are 1-4, versus the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 1-4, and I think the Raiders are going to win. So I think the Raiders are going to win. Like, both these teams are pretty bad, and both offenses have played horrible, but the Titans, I feel like they haven't really shown much of any good. Like, they should have lost last week, plain and simple. Like, there was the fumble into Kyler Murray's head, there was the fumble on the goal line, and there was the should have been Cam Ward interception that led to Titans touchdown. So the Titans really haven't shown anything, and they really should have lost last week. And then the Raiders. Yes, Geno Smith has played bad, and he has. But overall, I think he has a shot at turning it around because this Titans defense has played pretty bad. And that's kind of my only logic there, where at least with the Raiders, you've seen some good, a lot of bad, but some good, whereas the Titans, I feel like you haven't really seen any good. They should have lost last week. They've been playing bad this entire season, and that's just my only logic there. But I don't think either of these teams are particularly good. I don't think either of these teams are playoff teams. I just think the Raiders are just slightly, I don't even want to say better, they're less worse than the Titans. The Titans are worse than the Raiders. The next game is the San Francisco 49ers, who are 4-1, versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 4-1, and I think the Buccaneers are going to win. So now this one is very interesting to me because both of these teams have been playing really good. Mac Jones has been playing spectacular, and so has Baker Mayfield. And the 49ers, like the Ravens, have been dealing with a lot of injuries, but it seems not to matter. Mac Jones and the 49ers seem to be playing well and winning anyways. So I am picking the Buccaneers because I think their offense is better, and although their defense has been struggling, I think the Buccaneers defense no, I think 49ers defense is better, but this is really, really close because I think eventually Mac Jones' miracle run is going to run out because you always see this where, like Sam Darnold, where he was spectacular last year and then the final 3 weeks he fell apart. I think we might see that from Mac Jones where he's been playing spectacular, but eventually he's going to fall apart. And it could be this game, it could not, but this is probably going to be a high-scoring game, and every possession matters for both these teams. I just think the Buccaneers are just a little bit better of a team, and the 49ers just feel like such an unknown with all the injuries and with Mac Jones, and I don't know what I'm seeing here, because generally speaking, I would say, okay, 49ers, super injured, just like the Ravens, so they're probably bad. But unlike the Ravens, they're like working their way through injuries, and it's not even mattering. So I keep going a little bit back and forth, but overall, I think the Buccaneers are just a better team, and I think Baker Mayfield's playing at like an unstoppable level right now, and so I'm going to say the Buccaneers of Baker Mayfield win this game. The next game is the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 2-3, versus the Green Bay Packers, who are 2-1, and I think the Packers are going to win. So we just got the news that Joe Flacco is now going to be the new Bengals quarterback. And I think that's kind of interesting. I don't really like it in terms of the Bengals perspective because this is how I feel. It's like Flacco, I think he's going to have a lot worse plays than Jake Browning, but he's going to have a lot better play than Jake Browning too. Whereas Jake Browning, I think, is kind of more in the middle. And I understand the Bengals not wanting to throw away their season, but it's basically over because it seems like Joe Burrow is going to be done for the year. And I just don't believe that Joe Flacco's the guy that can make their season better. And it feels like they just threw away a fifth round pick. I just don't really understand that at all. And then although it would be really funny if the only Packers losses came both to Joe Flacco. But you have to look at that. During the game against the Browns, the Joe Flacco played horrible. He played horrible. Like no if two ands about it. It's just that the Browns' great defense shut down the Packers' offense, and then they kind of got lucky with a blocked game-winning field goal. Like look at this for the Packers. If there wasn't a blocked game-winning field goal, they would have beat the Browns 13-10. If there wasn't a blocked extra point, they would have beat the Cowboys 38-35. So the Packers are 2 blocked kicks away from being 4-0 right now. And so that tells me I think the Packers are a good team and they should win this one. So kind of comparing the Browns to the Bengals to see what we got with Joe Flacco. So the Bengals running game is worse than the Browns, I would say. The Bengals offensive line is worse than the Browns. But the Bengals receiving core is much better than the Browns with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They are just much better. And then the defense. Obviously, the Browns defense is much better than the Bengals defense. So I think the Packers should still win this. It's going to be up to the defense though, because we've seen the way the Packers play is they like to play their corners deep and they have an elite pass rush of Micah Parsons and Sean Gary. So the way to beat the Packers is just have a quick game. Just a lot of screens, a lot of slants, a lot of like 4 or 5 yard passes. And this game can go one of two ways, either like the Cowboys or like the Lions, where we saw with the Lions, they did all the short passing games. And then the linebackers and corners met them right at the point of like at the catch point. Because that's where you saw Jahmyr Gibbs had something crazy where it was like 11 receptions for 30 yards. Because he kept catching the ball short and then getting tackled immediately. And then you look at the Cowboys. That same thing there. They kept catching the ball short because of the Packers' elite pass rush and you get the ball out quickly. But the corners and linebackers missed tackles. And that just can't happen anymore. You just can't miss the tackles on the Green Bay's defense. And I get it. The Packers' offense is beat up. Their starting right tackle is injured. Their backup right tackle is injured, although he probably will play. Their starting left guard is injured. And their number 2 running back is injured, and their number 1 and number 2 receivers are injured. So I get it. Packers offense is still beat up, but it kind of feels like no excuses. The Packers need to win this game because they are in a little bit of a slump with losing to the Browns. Again, I understand it's by a blocked kick, and then losing to the Cowboys again, or tying with the Cowboys. I understand it's because of a blocked kick, but overall, it's just the stupid mistakes that the Packers need to stop hurting themselves with. And then Rich Bisaccia has not gotten fired yet, which I don't understand why, because since he's been hired and he's the highest paid special teams coach in NFL history, the Packers have had one of the worst special teams in NFL history. So the kickers. I don't really blame Bisaccia for the kickers because I think Anders Carlson and Braden Narvison were that bad, but the blocked field goals. That I blame on coaching because that feels more of like a luck play than an actual skill play where you just have one guy that misses his assignment and then that's a blocked kick. That is unacceptable. So, and then the punt and kick returns. They've just been terrible for the Packers. Like, Keyshawn Nixon had one good year at kick returning, and then punt returns have just been terrible. So, Rich Bisaccia needs to save his job, and if there's another blocked field goal or special teams mistake, I can't take it anymore. Just the Packers just need to get out of their own way and stop hurting themselves. But there's games like this where the Packers should win. The Lions took care of the Bengals. I understand that the Bengals kind of came back towards the end, but the Lions took care of the Bengals, and the Packers should be able to do it as well. I don't care that they have Joe Flacco. The Packers should win this no matter what. The next game is my next upset of the week. Is the Detroit Lions, who are 4-1, versus the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 2-3, and I think the Chiefs are going to win. So yes, you have the Lions, who are 4-1, versus the 2-3 Chiefs. So why am I picking the Chiefs? It's pretty simple. The Lions' defense, they are severely injured. Their number one corner, DJ Reed, looks like he's not playing. Their number two corner, Terrion Arnold, looks like he's not playing. It's unclear if Terrion Arnold's done for the year. Be honest, I don't think he's that great anyways, but he was a first-round pick, and their backups probably aren't that much better. So if you look at last week, Patrick Mahomes wasn't really the reason why they lost, in the sense where he made one really stupid decision with the pick six, which, yes, that's 100% his fault, but that felt like a one-time outlier stupid decision that shouldn't have happened. And then look at the final play of the game where the Jaguars had the game-winning touchdown. That also probably shouldn't have been a touchdown because Trevor Lawrence fell down, and then he got up. But once he initially fell down, the Chiefs' defense completely stopped playing. And so once they stopped playing, Trevor Lawrence just walked into the end zone. That's a coaching issue where it's like, for whatever reason, the defense thought, oh, he fell down, so that must be the play's over, he's down. No, that's a live ball, and he's still running. So overall, if it wasn't for those two mistakes, the Chiefs would have won last week, and I feel like we'd be having a whole different conversation. But I am still picking the Chiefs because I think the Chiefs' offense matches up really well against the Lions' defense. I can't remember if Rashid Rice comes back this week. I think he comes back next week. And so that is a good matchup. And then for the Lions, the Chiefs' defense has been playing really well, but the Lions' offense is probably still the best offense in the NFL. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game where every possession matters. I just think the Chiefs are a little bit better with how bad the Lions' defense is. So that is why I'm picking the Chiefs this week. The next game is the Buffalo Bills, who are 4-1, versus the Atlanta Falcons, who are 2-2, and I think the Bills are going to win. So this is an interesting game because what Atlanta Falcons are we getting? Because it feels like in the Falcons, their 2 wins, they looked like a really good team. Everyone's clicking on offense. Obviously, the offense was running through Bijan Robinson, but everything was looking really great on offense. And then their defense played really well as well. And then their 2 losses, their defense fell apart, their offense fell apart, and they looked like one of the worst teams in the NFL. So that's tough what you got from the Falcons there. So the Bills, last week their defense did not play well, and Josh Allen didn't play well. There was a few fumbles and interceptions. It was a lot of sloppy, bad football. And I think the Bills should be able to pick that up because they have played great other than last week. And last week was a divisional opponent, and it feels like divisional games are always a little bit weird and always a little bit messy. And so overall, I think the Bills are a better football team. I think they should win this one. I think it will probably be a little bit close because Bijan Robinson is really good, and the Bills' defense seems to struggle a bit in situational awareness. But I think the Bills should win this. And again, the Falcons are just so weird because it feels like they're either the worst team or the best team of the week, and there's no logical explanation where they score 0 points against the Panthers, who are the worst team in football. Like, I just don't get it. It makes no sense, but I think the Bills should win this one. The final game of the week is the Chicago Bears, who are 2-2, versus the Washington Commanders, who are 3-2, and I think the Commanders should win this game. Now, this game I keep going a little bit back and forth on because I think these are 2 very evenly matched teams where I think the Bears' offense is pretty good, and then the Bears' defense is overall pretty decent, but has been bad at times. And then the Commanders, I think their defense is really good, even though they didn't look good 2 weeks ago. And then their offense, I think Jayden Daniels struggled his first 2 weeks, but then last week, Jayden Daniels played really, really well. So I don't really know what you get for either of these teams because I think they've been both back and forth on like the spectrum of really good and really bad. Overall, I think the Commanders are probably a little bit better in terms of offense and defense because the Commanders have a better defense. And then offense, I think they're about equal. The Bears, again, Caleb Williams, he's played great and he's played horrible, so I don't really know what you got with him. Where I think he has the ability to be better than Jayden Daniels, but will he show that? I don't know. So again, these 2 are both equally unknown and both, I think, equally good teams. So I am just picking the Commanders because I think they're a little bit better. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, which teams you like, which teams you don't. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money, and I'll see you on the next one.